These are the top reasons why I switched to the Sony Alpha Mirrorless system. A couple of videos back, I talked about how to switch to the Sony Alpha Mirrorless system and my advice on how to do that and the different options. And I promised at the time, and I got a lot of requests to do another video as to the reasons why I switched to the Sony Alpha Mirrorless system. So that's what this video is all about. First things first, I am not married to any one system. I've been called a Sony fanboy. I used to be called a Canon fanboy when I shot Canon because I talked about Canon. I understood the system, and at the time I thought that was the best system. Today, I believe that Sony is the best system. So when at the time where I saw Canon go down in features and image quality, and not investing that much money in the platform, and I saw Sony doing the exact opposite, I investigated the platform, and that's why I made the switch. So I just want to tell people that I am not a fanboy. I just, I've done the research, and for me, this is the best systems out there. I started with Minolta, which turns out Sony actually bought many years later, but I haven't shot Minolta in like 20 years. So that had no bearing on any of this. And then I shot with Canon for about 15 years, because at the time, like I said, that I thought was the best system out there, bar none. And I switched to the Sony system about 4 years ago after I did research, and I found this Sony system to be the best system in the market. Okay, let's talk about the reasons why I think that Sony is the best system in the market. And number one for me is the image quality. There's no question. And today, Sony produces the best image quality sensors in the market. Bar none. Nobody is really touching them. They are, as you can see from this chart, all these cameras. This is a DxO ratings on all the top cameras in the market today, as far as image quality is concerned. And you can see that I've highlighted all the cameras here in red that use Sony sensors. And out of the top 20 or so, Sony occupies almost all of those spots. Just pretty incredible. Now, if you look at this list carefully, there is one big omission on this list. And who do you think that is? Canon. Canon doesn't have a single camera in this top 20 or 25, however many this is, different cameras, which is really a shame. Canon used to be on the top of the game. And they rested on their laurels. I don't know what they did, but they really didn't spend time and effort in research and development to keep up in this space. They were, the kings of the hill, and they thought that no one could dethrone them. And that's what happens when you get a little bit cocky, if you will, and don't keep up with the competition. You will notice here that Sony produces sensors for Hasselblad, Pentax, Nikon, and a number of others as well. But big names here are going to be Hasselblad and Nikon. Sony, Hasselblad, and Nikon just tend to have the top performing cameras out there, and the reason is because they're using Sony sensors. Okay. The other reason, for the image quality is what I bundled into this image quality heading is incredible low light performance. These cameras perform so well in low light that I don't hesitate at all to shoot at 1600, 3200, even 6400, something that I would have found inconceivable 5 years ago. And when you compare the performance of these cameras towards film, I mean, there's really no comparison as far as image quality is concerned. So this is the other reason why image quality to me on the Sonys is that much more important. And again, another reason here why the image quality is so much better is because the Sony sensors have some of the widest dynamic range of any sensor out there. As a matter of fact, they have the widest dynamic range of any sensor that's out there. Let's take a look here at a quick comparison, again from DxOMark, at the top 4 cameras in the market. I did not include Pentax in here because Pentax is not that big a name. And the DxO website only allows me to compare 3 cameras at a time. So it was not a sleight of hand here or trying to be deceitful by not including the Pentax camera. In here, I just chose 3 of them. These are all Sony sensors. We're looking at the dynamic range on these cameras, almost at 15 stops, 15 EVs, which is incredible. Yeah, there's nothing like it out there. And then you can see the low light performance of these cameras is also, very, very, very good compared to anything else that's out there. And that's what gives them these incredible ratings. So image quality to me is definitely the #1 reason. Now, the reason why Sony has done so well with these sensors is because Sony is a sensor manufacturing powerhouse. Sony actually is the largest sensor manufacturer in the world. They have over 50% of the market in sensor manufacturing. Think about that, more than 50%. So that means that Sony makes more sensors than the rest of the industry combined. The second biggest in the space is going to be Samsung, and they're somewhere in the 20%. Big change, big difference between all these different companies. And the reason for that is because Sony produces the sensors for a lot of different cameras that we talked about earlier, not only for the Sony cameras, but for Nikon and Hasselblad and Pentax and many others. But it's not just sensors on cameras in the traditional sense. They also produce the sensors for a lot of the smartphones, including this iPhone, as well as some Android phones. But any security camera, a lot of different cameras, anything that has a camera, chances are that it's a Sony camera, Sony sensor embedded in there. So this is part of the reason why these guys are on the top of the game, is because being so big means they have a lot of money to spend in research and development. Doing research and development on sensors, on semiconductors is extremely expensive, very, very expensive. Just, factories to produce sensors cost billions with a B, billions of dollars to create a factory, a chip fabrication factory. So you need to be big in this space to really be on top of the game, and that's why Sony is doing so well. They have the money to spend in the R&D and to produce the world's best sensors. Okay, second reason why is autofocus. Sony leads the entire market in speed and accuracy on autofocus systems. We're talking about 0.02 seconds in acquisition speed. Just incredible, super, super fast. And in a fraction of a blink of an eye, you can actually get the camera can actually focus and acquire focus and lock on a subject. Sony cameras tend to have more autofocus sensors than all the other cameras that are out there, which means faster autofocus, more accurate autofocus. Additionally, we're talking about some of the best, if not the best, tracking, real-time tracking while you're using autofocus system. And for me, especially a wildlife photographer, autofocus tracking is absolutely essential and important. Most of the tracking that Sony uses is artificial intelligence based. So it's really, really smart and very fast in the way it works. We also have real-time eye autofocus for humans, and something that's absolutely new that nobody else has is a real-time eye autofocus for animals. Again, for a wildlife photographer like myself, this is unreal. Yes, some of these features were not around when I did the switch over, but as we saw Sony improving their system and improving their camera platform, it was inevitable that they would get to this point. Now, as far as autofocus, the A9 has set the benchmark. It's unreal what the A9 has done to get people to switch over from other systems to the Sony system. This camera alone, if I had to guess, has had more people switch over, especially professionals. Because the autofocus on this camera is just out of this world. Absolutely amazing. It absolutely sets the benchmark. But what's really cool now is that we're seeing this same autofocus system move down the product line. We have it now. Sony had just announced it on the a6600, and it's even on a pocket camera. The RX100 Mark 7 has that same autofocus system. Just incredible. These are cameras that cost between $1,100 to $1,400 with the world's best autofocus system. This is just incredible. You don't see this from anybody else out there. Now, another reason is electronic viewfinder. Yes, this is a mirrorless camera thing, meaning that all mirrorless cameras have electronic viewfinders, but not all electronic viewfinders are the same. When I was investigating switching to Sony, I tested out cameras from Olympus, from Panasonic, from Fuji, and I will tell you right now that at the time, nobody had really good electronic viewfinders. What I mean by that, electronic viewfinders, most of them had a lag, meaning that what you were seeing through the viewfinder trailed real time by, half a second, sometimes a second. And, when you're shooting fast moving action, that is just a no-no. That just doesn't work. You can't do it. Sony was the first one out there with a real-time electronic viewfinder. It also had a much higher quality viewfinder. So for me, having Sony come up with a no-lag viewfinder was a game changer. There are a lot of other things about viewfinders that are really, really important for me switching over to mirrorless, but those are mirrorless traits. I'm going to talk about those at some point as well. And certainly I'm going to do another video on talking about the advantages of mirrorless. But besides the no lag, the fact that I can, when I'm looking through the viewfinder, I'm actually seeing what I'm going to get. I don't have to chimp. I don't have to take a picture and chimp on the back of the camera to judge my exposure. When I'm looking through the viewfinder, what I'm seeing is what I'm going to get. I can also have a little histogram shown up on my viewfinder. I can have zebras as well. And we're going to talk about those in a different video when I talk about the advantages of mirrorless systems. But again, for me, what Sony offered in the to switch over to Sony as opposed to any other mirrorless system was really the no lag viewfinder and the high resolution viewfinder, much better image quality than what you were seeing from all the other camera manufacturers that are out there. And then when we have cameras like the A9 that have absolutely no blackout viewfinder, it's another big thing that's also unique to Sony. I believe, or Sony was one of the first ones, if not the first one, to come out with this feature. But you're starting to see that in other manufacturers as well. But the idea is that when you press that shutter, you don't get that blackout on your viewfinder like you do with DSLRs. And believe it or not, a lot of mirrorless still have that. The A9 came out with 100% blackout-free viewfinder. The A7 III, in a certain mode configuration, you get a no blackout viewfinder. It's a lower quality view in the viewfinder. The image that it produces are still the same quality, but so you do have a limited no blackout, and some of the newer cameras also that Sony are producing have no blackout viewfinders. Again, another feature that's really unique and really, really cool from Sony. Now, another reason why Sony is really one of my preferred vendors or preferred camera manufacturers today is their lens lineup. They have a complete line of lenses. Yes, they've been criticized in the past because they didn't have super telephotos, but that's been completely remedied. Sony has an incredible lineup of lenses from super wide angles to super telephotos, from 14 millimeters all the way up to 600 millimeters, and a lot in between. Some incredible lenses to use. But what's really cool about this is that because a lot of these lenses are new, they have modern designs, which mean that they're sharper than the lenses that a lot of other companies are producing. Take, for example, the Sony 100 to 400 zoom lens. All the other previous 100 to 400s, or in the case of Nikon, 80 to 400, yeah, they were okay. The Canon Mark II version was acceptable. The one was not. The Nikon wasn't. The 80 to 400 is actually a pretty mediocre lens. But when Sony came out with a 100 to 400, it was a complete revelation. Sharper than any other zoom lens that I had ever used before. Just absolutely stunning, stunning lens. And the reason for that is not some black magic. It's because These are brand new lenses where Sony is able to leverage the latest technology in lens design and come up with lenses that are sharper and better and more reliable than anything else that's out there. So, so that's another reason why having a modern lineup of lenses, a modern designs in lenses, makes a big difference for me. But in addition to that, Sony is supported by many other lens manufacturers, not just Sony. We're talking about Zeiss, Venus Optics, Rokinon, Sigma, Tamron, and many more. More than any other camera manufacturer, I'd like to say. In addition to that, you could use a Canon and Nikon lenses with adapters. And this is a great way to actually transition from a Nikon or a Canon lens, a Canon system to a Sony system, is by using the adapters. And in my video that I give suggestions and advice on switching, I talk about that. And that's for example, the route that I took when I switched from Canon to Sony. Okay, innovation is another one. It's amazing how fast Sony is innovating. They're producing new sensors, new cameras, new lenses, new features faster than anybody else out in the industry. It's actually kind of crazy the number of cameras they're introducing out there, and how they're iterating. For example, the Canon 7R, we're on version 4 now, and that camera system has been out, for what, 5 years? Something like that, 5-6 years. Just incredible how fast they've been innovating in this space. And you compare that with, Nikon or even Canon being so slow. I mean, we're talking about they're introducing a new version of the 5D, which is, arguably the most popular camera, DSLR, and it takes about 5 years to come up with one version of that camera. And then that release wasn't anything all that exciting. In addition to that, they're copying something that Fuji has been really well known for doing, is with new firmware updates. They're adding new features to existing cameras. Just to give you an idea, we're talking about the firmware versions for the R3, I believe, and the 8.9. We're up to like version 5 of the firmware, and they've added new features. For example, now the A7R has a built-in intervalometer, which it didn't have before. The A7R3 did not have that. Now it does. It was a new feature that was added. And over the time that they've been releasing this firmware, Sony has been really good about adding new features and tweaking the cameras, which leads me also to my last point here, and is Sony's willingness to listen to its customers. Especially Canon has been notoriously about being stubborn and not listening to their customers and doing whatever they want and not accepting feedback and adding features and changing based on customer feedback. Sony is not like that at all. They've actually gone out of their way to solicit feedback and ask people for their opinions and add those into the system. What that has done is actually made the cameras iterate and change quite a bit, which some people complain about because, from one version to the other, there may be actually substantial changes, but I think that's a good thing. The way that Sony has been in listening and soliciting advice has been remarkable, and a complete departure from the rest of the industry, frankly. Well, folks, I hope that you found this video useful. I'll try to keep this nice and short. If you find this information useful, I would appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel, and better yet, hit that little bell that's up there so you'll be notified when I produce new videos, and share your videos with your friends. The more subscribers I have to my channel, the more I'm able to produce these videos, and I'm able to produce more videos for you in a faster time frame. So make sure to share the videos, tell your friends about it, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks a bunch. Until next time, take care.